Welcome to the Property Couch, where each week you get to listen to two of Australia's leading experts. Bryce Holdaway, co-host of Location Australia on Foxtel's Lifestyle Channel, co-host of Escape from the City on the ABC, and partner of Empower Wealth Advisory. Ben Kingsley, chair of Property Investors Council of Australia and the founder of Empower Wealth Advisory, named the 2018 and 2019 Property Advisory Firm of the Year. Stay tuned as they bring you the insider's guide to property, finance and money management.
All right, folks, welcome back to the Property Couch podcast summer series. And Ben, welcome back to you on the last day of one of the most interesting years we will probably ever experience.
You'll never forget it. Simple. You'll never forget this year. No matter how old you are, you'll be talking about this when you're 50. You'll be talking about mask wearing. You'll be talking about, lockdowns. You'll be talking about social distancing. Yes. You'll be talking about ISO. You'll be talking about how planes never travelled. Yeah. You'll be talking about, you haven't turned your mic on. Yeah. I can't see you. I can hear you, but I can't see you.
Yeah.
All stuff that you'll be talking about all of the fun things that happened in 2020, including the grand final being played in a foreign land called Queensland.
In October.
Right. So there you go.
Very good. Oh, mate, you riffed that off like you'd practiced, and I know you hadn't. So obviously you've been waiting for your moment, hey? But last day of 2020, summer series day, we have got a very, very good interview with Michael Musolino. It was exciting, really interesting backstory, yeah?
Yeah, a challenging backstory is probably the best way to describe it, and how you can overcome some of those challenges, right? But when you're faced with those challenges as a young child, and then to work through those, and then to also be, this is what this podcast is about, isn't it? Right? That financial transformation, the money transformation. So I think we've got a great show coming up. So I can't wait to get into the interview.
We do, folks. Let's cut to the chat we had with Michael Musolino. All right, Ben, we've got a very special guest today on the Property Couch Summer Series. We are talking with Michael Musolino. First of all, welcome to the Property Couch, Michael.
Thanks for having me, guys.
You're welcome. Did I get the surname right, first of all?
You did perfectly, actually.
Oh, okay. I've been
He's good.
Every single day.
He's good.
Hey, Michael, we're excited to chat to you today for a whole range of reasons, but largely the summer series is about money transformation. And we know that you're interested in your finance, you're interested in your money management. So we want to unpack that at various levels throughout our chat. But so we can kick this off, and so all of our audience can better understand you and your money backstory. Can you tell us what money was like for you growing up in your household?
Extremely tight. I would describe it as. My mother sort of left the family when I was probably below 10 years old, and left my dad and the rest of us with nothing, basically. Not that she took it all, but we didn't have anything. Dad's business went bust, and we sort of had to go and move in with grandmother and grandfather for a while. It was extremely tight. And then my dad met someone else, and she had 2 kids of her own, so it was 5 children, 2 adults in the household, and very, very tight.
Yeah. So Michael, so can you tell us a little bit around what tight looks like for you growing up? How did that manifest itself for you in your life? Were you seeing your dad under stress, or was it all kind of out of sight, out of mind, but you just knew it was happening?
Yeah, it was more out of sight, out of mind. The only thing I sort of saw was, if I wanted to go to the movies or do something with my friends, the answer was always no. We can't do it at the moment, that sort of thing.
And in terms of, this is obviously very difficult, right? It must have been, how many in the family? Let's sort of paint a picture of the other siblings.
Yeah, so myself, I'm the middle child. I've got an older brother and a younger sister, and the 2 stepbrothers from my dad.
Okay. So once your mother left, there was just the 3 of you. So your dad's trying to raise you and also trying to save his business at the same time. And then obviously the grandparents come in and step in. how transparent was that process? I mean, I know Bryce was sort of asking, you know, you were getting told no for asking for monetary things, but, you know, how did your dad share that story with you, or did you just sort of through osmosis of observation see what was going on and thought, well, we're definitely in a different situation than most?
Yeah, I think it was just through
observing,
seeing what was happening and being told always no, we can't do this, we can't do that. And like my dad had already lost the business basically when my mum left.
Right.
So he didn't have a job either, which just made it harder, you know.
Yeah. And where were we? We grew up in Adelaide?
Yes, grew up in Adelaide.
Yep.
Northern suburbs.
So this is playing out in northern suburbs of Adelaide at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So how did that play out for you when you, obviously there's I guess a bit of a scarcity mentality that you had to adopt just as a survival instinct through the family, and then trying to feed 7 mouths is difficult at the best of times.
Mm.
How did that sort of flow through to you? If we fast forward to when you got your first job, was that legacy something that you continued in for a while, or did you find it that you sort of rebelled and went the opposite? What did your money story look like when you were really able to control your own destiny through your own pay packet?
I started working when I was about 15, just to get a bit of pocket money and be able to do some things that I wanted to do. But to be honest, I was really bad with money. My dad told me, you know, said if I wanted, I could give him my pay and I would just get an allowance a bit, you know, every week. I did that for about maybe a year. And I thought to myself, I'm never going to learn if I keep getting other people to help me. So I took control back. Good or bad, I don't know, but every pay packet was gone at the end of the week. So,
so no budgeting, just money in, money out. Hopefully there was $1 left in positive territory, but just before the next pay packet came.
Pretty much, yeah. But I was still at school as well, so it wasn't massive sums until I finished high school. Then I went, worked more hours, but I found the same thing happening, you know, $700-800 a week, gone every week, just in, out, yeah.
So, but that sort of makes, because you're experiencing things that you didn't get a chance to, right? Because there was no money to go around for you and your other brother and sister. So this is tough time. So, you know, necessity is the mother of all invention, right? And so what did you invent? Well, you invented the idea that you needed, if you wanted to be participating in this, you got to go out and get a job. And then all of a sudden it's like, you know, well, that was money that I did create. So I got a right to basically roll with it and choose how I wanted to spend it at that time, and probably have that level of comfort in knowing that I'm not too dissimilar to all the other kids that I see in the street and at school and doing all that. It's very, very common in terms of how we want to connect with people and how we feel that connection is about doing what they're doing, right?
Yeah.
So take us to the point where there must have been something that sparked an interest in you changing the path that you were taking, or the destiny that you were on in terms of managing your money, because you're a better money manager now. So, but there was a fork in the road moment where you were going to go down the same path of just blowing it every week versus being better at it. Take us to that fork and what was it and what changed?
There was a few things sort of happening at the same time. I'd been with my then girlfriend since I was 17. She's now my wife with my 2 beautiful kids. But I was with her. She was just telling me how bad I was, which was fair. You know, it is what it is. But I had a job in a cafe and I was just like young. I was washing dishes, making some pizzas, that sort of stuff. Then I thought to myself, my wife's going to uni at the time, or my girlfriend at the time, she's gone to uni, and if I continue down this path, it's all night shifts and things like that. And if I continue, I'm never going to see her or be able to have a family and see them and things like that. So I changed my job and I went into a butcher place. They offered me an apprenticeship, which I ended up turning down, but I worked as a butcher for a couple of years. And in that time, I bought a car. So I borrowed money from the bank to buy a car at the time. And then I went and got a credit card. And this is where all the fun began.
Cue the danger zone music.
Yeah. I maxed out the credit card, fixing up the car, doing things, whatever.
And fixing up the car, which also included the latest stereo system that needed to be in that car, fair enough to say.
Wheels, the whole bit.
The mags and the stereo, the only two things other than the 8 litres engine that you need to squeeze into the Tirana at the time, right?
That's it. Fun times. Yeah.
Reminiscing there.
So I spent everything on the car, and then after it was finished and I'd spent all the money, I rode the car off.
Oh.
So that wasn't pleasant. I had insurance on the car, but it didn't cover the extras. So I was able to pay the actual car loan off, but I still had the $8,000 from the credit card. And at the same time, at my job, they said, look, we don't need you for this many hours anymore. And I went from, $800 a week or $700-800 to, $300 to $400. And it was literally just enough to pay the loan for the car, petrol, whatever, like pretty much get to work and go to my wife's after that. It wasn't much of a life, to be honest. It was really bad. That was the lowest point.
Yeah.
And in terms of the banking setup that you had at that time, did you when you started getting your first pay packet, were you one of the many who have just said, well, I got a kid's saver account from a certain bank, and so that was the only bank account I had, so I'd never changed? Or did you shop around early? When you got your car loan, did you move your banking, or was it all with the same bank?
All with the same bank, yeah. I didn't know all Bank SA. But shortly after, because I was struggling to keep up with the bills, couldn't afford to eat. I had to, I bought 1 can of tuna and a loaf of bread. The loaf of bread was for the week. The can of tuna, the small ones, was for the day. That was my lunch. And then I'd go to my wife's place, my mother-in-law, and would eat dinner there for a little, and then I'd go home. Keep in mind, I was still 18, 19, so still pretty young. I'm glad I did it, to be honest. I have to say I'm glad I did it. But because it was so tight, I sought help. And there was a company that does that sort of stuff. They help you with your finances.
Debt elimination.
And pay all your bills. So I went back to doing that, like pretty much what my dad was doing for me. I got this other company to do, but they rang the creditors, they negotiated with them, and I ended up able to pay them all back over a couple of years or whatever. And what I learned from that was I can't take anything for granted, and I've just got to learn. I've got to get better. So I started picking up books, the normal one, Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and started from there. Just started learning about money, how it works, how to handle it better, and that sort of stuff. And I think I was with that company for 6 months to a year. I looked closely at what they were doing and how they were doing things, and then I took over my own finances again. Just started really concentrating on, saving, paying down the debt as much as possible. What you were saying before, Ben, about the different banks, I was pretty lucky. At the time, there was a 0 interest credit card on any transferred from another credit card. So I jumped onto that, and it wasn't for a set period. It was for the life of that balance, as long as you don't use any more. So I jumped onto that, transferred it all, got 0%, cut the card up, didn't want to see it again. Paid it off as quick as possible, and then just started saving and got better from there. And saying that, I ended up buying my first house at 21. So
wow. That is a huge turnaround in such a short period of time. Tell us what they taught you about eliminating debt. What was their strategy that you learned from dealing with these businesses that focus on, effectively financial counselling in a way, don't they?
Yeah, pretty much. From what I remember was I mean, I only had the two little debts, or one big one, one smaller one, but they sort of just got me to pay off the smaller one first. They didn't look at interest rates and things like that as much, but it was a small win at the time, and then move on to the bigger one.
And it's called the debt snowball, right? Which mathematically doesn't make sense, but quite often people who are in financial challenges, in a vacuum, they'd pay the most expensive debt off first, even if it's the biggest one. But what you find is when people are in that sort of financial trauma, by showing them some psychological wins along the way, they start to build momentum because, again, it doesn't make mathematical sense to pay off the smaller one first if it's not the most expensive debt, but it makes psychological sense, and you build up this head of steam so that it becomes a snowball running down the mountain, and you get that confidence and that momentum. And you think, I can do this and I can get it done, because the mathematicians would tell you that that's not a good strategy, but for people who are in struggle street, it's a very good strategy.
Yeah. Well, I've heard a saying before, know thyself, and I don't know what the rest of it is, but anyway, if you know yourself, you know how you behave and things like that, then half the battle is won.
Yeah. Money simple. Behavior's hard. It's the behavior stuff you gotta find ways to get around.
And even still today, I know where I lack in certain areas, and I avoid it. It's the most simple way for me to get around my faults.
Yeah, it's an AA principle. If you don't want to slip, don't go to slippery spots. So it means that you don't go there, and if you're susceptible to that, you don't get credit cards.
So this transformation's stepped you into a deposit for a house. Wow. And then all of a sudden that money that you didn't miss is then sort of paying the mortgage. Is that how it sort of played out for you? Or tell us a little bit about that journey in terms of why you thought a home is your next logical step in your transformation.
Well, we hadn't really paid off the credit card by the time we chose to go down that path. My wife had decided that she was going to leave university, and she got offered a traineeship at Rain & Horn real estate.
Yep.
And just her being around, all the real estate people and things like that, they all had houses. They all, it was all about houses and buying houses and things like that. So it just came into her mind. She said, look, we have to buy a house. So, all right, well, let's have that goal and work towards it. So my wife started working at the time, so she was able to start saving for the house deposit. And I was just basically trying to pay off the credit card at the same time.
Powerful combination, and a very smart woman. No wonder you married her. Yep, that's right.
Yeah. I do credit her for everything. but we won't tell her that.
Oh, no. Well, she might listen, but all the good stuff comes from her by the sounds of it. What I wanted to ask you before, Michael, is how would you rate yourself as a money manager now? You've been through this journey. You've obviously got that story with the credit card. Here you are in your mid-30s. What rating do you give yourself as a money manager now?
Rating, geez.
Just, are you good? Are you bad? Are you well and truly left all those sins of the past? Are you sometimes find yourself tripping up? Just a general sort of sense of what you like now.
I think I'm okay. I would say okay, but there's always room for improvement.
Mm-hmm.
I actually think I'm probably too tight with money now. And it's because once I've got my sights on a goal, I just don't care about anything else other than that goal, and I just try to achieve it. And that's where I'm actually at now. So just been trying to get my next investment property or do the subdivision. I haven't actually decided which one I'm going to do.
Mm-hmm.
That's my next goal, and that's what I'll be working for.
Now, you've been exposed to the Property Couch podcast for some time. You've been listening to us for a while, and therefore exposed to Money Smart. So, two-part question, but how did self-education around property finance and money management come on your radar, and what sort of books and tapes and podcasts were you consuming? What was the spark to do that, and then we'll get into the property story after that.
Okay. So the spark was I wanted to get into more property, so I bought my third house, so my second investment. And after purchasing it, I just thought to myself, geez, before I purchased it, I was probably spending too much on junk, just food, basically. Um, and I could have done better there. And I thought, because I've already purchased this other property, I have to tighten the reins a bit just to make sure that I can continue to afford it and things like that. And books, apart from Robert Kiyosaki, my favorite book, I have to say, is The Richest Man in Babylon.
That's a good one.
It's very simple, but it's my go-to. Every year, I reckon, at least once a year, I'd listen to it. The first year, I'll probably listen to it 8 times or so, just to get it in my head. And
So in your words, just try and, for the community who hasn't discovered that book, what were the sort of 2 or 3 key takeaways that you get out of that, and what you keep refreshing your mind about, when you revisit that book?
It's just savings, plain and simple. It's don't live beyond your means. It's really that simple.
And money accumulates.
Yeah, and
Yep.
It does, yeah. And then from there, you've got choices. If you want, you invest your money, and the compound effect of that gets you wealthier quicker. But without that first step, you never get anywhere. And this is why that first step is probably the most important, not only at the start, but throughout the journey. That's why I keep refreshing. That's why I keep going back to it.
Yeah, and those texts have been around for a long time. They've stood the test of time. They're pre-plastic money. They're pre-credit cards. The principles are timeless. So that's what makes them so great. So it is a classic. So you were exposed to money smarts. What was your life like being exposed to that? How did that add value to your situation?
It just helped me track my money better, basically. I've created my own spreadsheet as well. And I know what I've done is I've created the spreadsheet not only to see how much is in my bank every day, but I've connected my mortgage on my PPOR within the spreadsheet so that I can track whatever's in my offset account and how it's affecting my mortgage payments and stuff like that. And trying to get that down as quick as possible so that I can borrow it against it again to buy another house.
So you love the detail and you love tracking it, which is a more active approach. What is it? Does that provide you with? Is it stimulation? Is it security? Is it a sense of fear of not wanting to go back to, money being extremely tight as a child? What's the motivation for you being so active? Because the bigger picture of Money Smarts is 10 minutes a month, but as Ben and I speak to a lot of people who are adopting it, there's those who just absolutely love that it's 10 minutes a month, they get on live, and then there's other people that like to be, right in with the weeds and make sure they know all the moving parts. Why does that appeal to you?
Just interest. Yeah, I like seeing the mortgage come down as much as possible. I just enjoy seeing the effects and how my life can change. The way I've set it up, I can go into it and put in for the next 10 years if I save this much and what I can achieve with it. And yeah, it makes me start planning, thinking ahead and things like that. So,
what does it mean to you if you achieve your goals and your financial peace? What will that mean for you personally?
Just security. Yeah. I've always said that I'm a lazy person. I don't want to work. Therefore, I will work my ass off and do as good as I can to not have to work when I'm old.
To be that lazy person.
Yeah, pretty much.
Irony, right?
It is.
So, because you're the guy that jumps in, you go out to sea and you're not going to come back to the harbour until the job is done, right? So, and then when the job's done, you can relax and enjoy. So, tell us a bit about what you're shooting for. You talked about security. Are you clear on what that looks like? If you're trapping all this surplus and you're clearly driven by accumulating a property portfolio. What's the point? What are you heading for?
Well, I want to be able to retire with a good lifestyle that, I don't have to worry about money, but also I want to be able to give that to my kids, to my girls. I think it's something that I never had and that I've always wanted to help them with, sort of thing. Like
a couple of important things going on there, right? You got home security, like in terms of family connection and bonding, which is there, and then the financial security that goes with that, right? which is basically a stable household. And most Australians would be, thrilled with a stable household and financial security, right? So one of the great reasons why we do what we do. What are some of the big rocks in the jar for your family? I mean, this is also part of the great joy we get to do, is we get to see how people set their goals up and what's important. We've had, certain people on the podcast who are passionate about cars, and other people want travel and all of that type of stuff. What are some of the things that float your boat, Michael?
Everything, buddy. Everything.
Now, what's your vice?
Yeah, is it like just the finer things in life, or are we just talking about no experiences and connection? Well, tell me a bit more about, because if it is everything, it's that is obviously the abundant mindset, right? But we don't have enough money for everything, so can we define that a little bit better?
Yeah, I'd say maybe an overseas travel every year later on. By saying that, the first time I've ever been overseas was 2018.
Wow.
Ever. That was
Where'd you go?
We went from here, we went to Italy, did a couple of cities in Italy, then went to Paris, and we were actually in Paris when France won the World Cup. So that was awesome.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a moment in time.
It was. Yeah. And then went to England for a bit, and then back to Italy, because we didn't do Rome straight away. We just did one night in Rome and then went to south of Italy, because that's where my family's from. So we went to south of Italy. I went to a wedding there, which was great as well. That was a good experience. Yeah, and then came back here. So it was 4 or 5 weeks.
I mean, so that's technically a mature age person arriving in Europe for the first time. I mean, it's an extraordinary place, isn't it?
Fantastic.
No wonder you've got a travel bug after that trip. I think I was 19 when I first went into Europe, and actually 21. And I always used to say,
you've got a good memory.
What's Europe? Well, it just struck me so much, because I was a big talker about, why would I want to go to Europe? I've got everything I need here in Australia, and all I'm going to do is see a lot of old churches. Like, how boring is that going to be? Yeah. That was the comment that I made to my step-grandmother at the time, right? She was an English lady. Oh my, did I eat my words and apologise so many times after a trip to Europe. Like, it is amazing. It's one of the greatest places to get lost in, and all the different, it's just incredible, the history and everything like that. So I was very young and naive, and I was so wrong about that, and travel bug for me. Like, there's so many amazing places out there for everyone to go and see.
Yeah. I didn't learn that lesson until I was about 36.
But now you got it, right, and now you've got a dream, and you've got a desire and a motivation to get there. Did you take the girls with you this time?
I did, yeah. That was one of the things I said. I would never go overseas or do a trip without them, because growing up, my mother did that. And I remember thinking, she's gone overseas and left us behind.
Yeah.
It wasn't a good feeling, so I didn't want to do that to my kids.
Nice.
Michael, how much do those early experiences shape you now, in terms of, you're driven, your security is a main thing for you, you'll stay out at sea until the job's done. Clearly there's some influence from those early childhood of scarcity. How much is that a conscious thing for you versus a subconscious thing for you?
No, I think a bit of both. I'm trying to actually get out of that still. This is what I was saying. I can always get better. Like, I still find myself trying to save every penny, just in case, sort of thing, or trying to invest everything I possibly can for the future, so it doesn't happen. Instead of what my wife has been trying to teach me before we went to Europe for the first time is, it's okay to have a bit of fun. It's okay to spend a little bit on some things. And that's why we decided, like, what we did, we bought our last property in 2017, and then 2018 we went overseas. So it was a bit of a reward for that. And
a lot of hard work.
Yeah, and that's what I want to continue.
You've gone and you've sought some professional help, and you've sort of tried to put the big rocks in the jar and lay all of that out for you. Has that helped you? I mean, you're talking about your wife sort of saying it's okay that we do have some discretionary spending, and it's all about smelling the roses on the journey to the final destination, rather than getting there and having a hollow experience in the middle of that journey, right? So has that helped you? And now that you potentially have the the weekly allowance and that is, there's some money set aside for maybe, some takeaway or whatever it is?
Yeah, to be honest, it hasn't helped me personally.
Okay.
I find it very hard to get out of my mindset. I struggle with it, right? But it comes back to what I was saying before. If I know what I'm like, then I can get around it. So what I do every week is I give my wife, $600, and that's for discretionary spending, food for the household, things like that. And I give myself $50, and that includes my petrol to get to work and back. So
yeah.
I know I can't get out of it, but I know a way around it.
Well, the thing is that, when we're kids, we're scared of the monster under the bed, but there's never a monster under the bed. It's just the thought of the monster under the bed. So as we become adults, sometimes there is still a monster under the bed, but it's the thought of it, not the actual reality of it. So it sounds like you're building all these external brick walls around so that monster doesn't come and get you. But the interesting thing, and I think a lot of our community who can relate to your story and want to sort of help themselves, it's just remembering you told yourself a story when you were a young boy. So back then we weren't as mature and aware as we are as adults, right? So we tell ourselves stories around, it's money's tight, what that means about me. And then what happens is we get a bit older and we forget to, I use a Mac, right? So it's like me trying to drive, an app, a current app on my iPhone now using, that's built for an iPhone 11 using the very first iPhone, right? The operating system would not be able to handle it, and yet I'm still trying to do that. So part of the development that may help you, Michael, is first of all to acknowledge that an under 10-year-old told you that story, and now I said mid-30s before, you just described it as you're in your late 30s. So there's a whole lot of life experience. You've got a job, you've got a family, you've got a roof over your head, you bought invest. So all those false beliefs around what that looks like in scarcity can actually be, there's 3 steps. 1, to make yourself aware of it. 2 is to weaken it, and then 3 to override it with a new one. And it's really around spending some time weakening it, because you've now got a history of taking your family to Europe. You've now got a history of buying multiple investment properties, which is unusual. You've now got a history of making sure that you only spend $50 a week, including the fuel, which is extraordinary. So you can start to chip away, because no one can go from this thought process to this thought process in 5 minutes. But if you just continually chip away, the evidence in your life would suggest that you aren't going to go back to that lifestyle of when you were under 10. And yet your operating system is saying, yeah, but what if, but what if, but what if? And that's part of the growth. You've intellectually developed a whole range of technical skills. You just haven't I'm making judgments here because I don't know you well enough, but we've got to upgrade the emotional story so that you can enjoy it and not have to just build all these walls around so tightly for fear of something that happened 25 years ago.
Yeah, definitely right.
So can I build on that in terms of when you did make the invisible visible, when you went and got some cash flow analysis and planning work done, did the buffers and all of that give you some level of comfort? Like, did you work out, because obviously when we do our models, right, that we can work out roughly how many years our money will last in the event of something happening? Did you study that, or because I mean, you gave us another clue earlier in regards to you have now built your own spreadsheet. You now have your mortgage tracker that basically for every dollar you put on there, you see your mortgage going down, right? So that is in itself, for the vast majority of Australians, that would be incredibly useful. like I wish more people would do that, because they do overspend. But in your case, it can also potentially be isolating to opportunity because of the challenges you have. So it's a long-winded way of sort of saying, when you did do that cash flow modelling and you were looking at the plan and you saw those buffers, does that give you some level of comfort to sleep at night, or is there still this driving ambition to continue to keep getting that debt down?
Yeah, no, I think still the driving ambition. Yeah, I still want to try and pay the house off. When I say pay the house off, I debt recycling.
It's a trade-off, right? Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
So for everyone who understands what debt recycling means, it's basically paying down the mortgage so you can release the equity. And as you release the equity, because this is the one thing that is unique in your circumstances, you're actually comfortable with debt, but you want your debt to be productive. You don't just want it to be, you don't want to have any lazy money at all.
Yeah.
And that in itself is highly admirable, for those people. But we don't want you to achieve financial anorexia, which is when you get to that journey. And I think, again, I don't want to put words into someone's mouth who I've never met, but Jerry Harvey came from an extraordinary impoverished household, and he never wanted to be poor again. And he's since gone about building out, incredible wealth in the hundreds of millions, maybe even $1 billion of wealth. He still flies economy, so there's still this, so you still got this, I don't understand why you'd pay for business. I don't see the value in business. But in terms of, so for some people, there's still an amazing mentality that what if that happened? And then so I still want that security, but that security pot just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And then, while you will pass it on to the next generation, they will enjoy it. And we want people to be able to get that balance right. So fear is a great motivator, only to a point. And then, as Bryce is saying, you're going to have to tell yourself a new story, because where you're going, Michael, is certainly incredibly attractive to a point of wealth accumulation and then debt consolidation. But then it is, as you say, if that holiday was amazing and that's what your driver is, then that's a good news story. But we just don't want it in the bank, or because you can't take it with you to wherever that next life is, right?
Yeah, well, I keep trying to tell myself there's no point in being the richest man in the cemetery.
Mm-hmm.
No,
So,
you never see a hearse towing a trailer.
Yeah. That's why I did decide after our last trip that every time we buy another investment property or do something significant, like pay off this house, that we would reward ourselves. So
awesome. That's great.
So what my wife has been wanting for a long time is a nicer house for us to live in. So that's going to be definitely one of the big rocks in the jar. It's not going to be anything that's going to happen anytime soon, but I know she still wants a nicer house. So what I said, what we can do is maybe after we buy this next investment, or if we go down the path of doing a subdivision, which we've already started, but I still haven't actually complete,
the planning work and all of that goes
with
it. Yeah.
But I said, look, we have to reward ourselves. Since we can't really go overseas and do anything like that, well, then why don't we fix up this house? Get a new kitchen, new bathroom, new floors, do it up and make it really nice.
Hey, Michael, that sounds like a nice intermediary on the way to your wife's goal. Let's change gears. Let's talk about your property journey. Tell us a bit about the types of properties you like to buy, and I know that there's some property development aspiration for you as well. So fill us in with that if you could.
I was always told land is king. That's what you want. So my first house, I bought a 700 square meter block. Didn't think about anything else other than the size of the land and what I could do in the future with it. Didn't know about where, location or anything. It was the same suburb as what my grandfather lived in. So awesome. I was close to grandfather, and that was my first house. After that, I moved to Melbourne. All I wanted was detached, so I wanted my own house on its own block. I didn't want anything else other than that. And I moved to Pascoe Vale. So I came here 2013, and I left my wife and my kids in Adelaide, and I came here by myself, and I stayed with my uncle for a year. So I was lucky enough to be able to come. They didn't charge me rent or anything like that, but the trade-off was I had to leave my family in Adelaide for a year. Throughout that year, I was just trying to save and go and look at properties in Melbourne, and straight away I just noticed a big price disparity between the two states. It was crazy. Originally, I was looking for something similar to what I had in Adelaide, so 4-bedroom, 700 square meter block, something like that. Started looking around Pascoe Vale because that's where my uncle was, and just realised I could not afford it. It was just way out of my price range. So I just sort of kept moving out each suburb until I got to Mill Park and ended up finding 550 square meters, but it was a house by itself on its own block. So I was happy with that.
Beautiful.
Yeah, good spot. Met my wife one suburb away from you in South Morang, so I know that part of the world very well. So is the plan to continue to accumulate properties? Do you know what the end goal is? How many you need to fulfill your ambition?
I think depending on what type of asset I buy, it'll be between say 5 and 7. But I'm hoping towards the 7 mark more so. And one of my things is I think I've made too many mistakes in what I've bought. In Adelaide, I bought because my grandfather was there, and it was northern suburbs, so it hasn't really grown much for me. It hasn't done much, and I've owned it for almost 15 years now. When I moved to Mill Park, I ended up buying the one I'm in, and then in 2017 I bought another one in Mill Park. And after that, I started listening to your podcast and all the research and things that need to happen behind the scenes. And I just started thinking, damn, I don't think I've got, the time. I don't think, and I've actually decided my next one, I'm going to use a buyer's agent. I know my faults and I have to try and get around it. So buyer's agent is...
Well, what you're basically saying to yourself, and it's a really good, honest conversation, is if I can't do it as good as the expert, then I'm making an investment into the expert to do it for me, to the subject matter expert. Like, in terms of the career that you're doing and what you do, I'm sure that I couldn't manufacture or make or do what you do as good as what you do it, right?
Yeah.
So that there is that trade-off. I mean, right through the course of the journey that you're on is you are making delayed gratification decisions. You are making some sacrifices for the family, moving to Melbourne first to be able to get there. 7 properties in the plan to build up that cash flow, and remembering that if the one day you make good on the promise of a bigger home or a better home in a better location, depending on what that means for you, that'll probably come off a bit, but you'll still be left with 3 or 4 good ones, or 2 to 3 really good ones, plus a house that you'll own outright, plus the super that goes with that. And in reality, that's going to give you a very comfortable retirement, right? Because with all of that potentially being debt-free, and you don't have to touch the capital base, you're actually in a pretty healthy position there, Michael. So you've got a pathway, and you've got to be admired for being really strong about what that pathway looks like. And most of the time we're teaching people how to get back on plan, to get back on track. We think that of the people that you look after, about a third of them thrive, and there's just, they're self-motivated, all that's great. About the other third, you're forever sort of just helping them realign and balance. And a third just basically give up. So that's why society is like it is, and why there is the haves and the have-nots, because some of them got off the bus early enough, and some of them didn't do the trade-offs. Some of them didn't make the sacrifices, and the ones who did tend to show up, get the job done, and have the fruits of their labour after that time. So again, I think it's brilliant in terms of the story that you've shared with us today on the summer series here, because it's just another avenue of the vulnerability, the courage that you've shown to give us the messages that you've given us, and how committed you are to bring security to you and your family, and you've got to be absolutely commended for that, mate.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. So, Michael, my final question for you is, do you now have conversations with your dad about your money, or is that something that's not on the table? And if it's the latter, tell us what you think, the pride that your dad would have to think that, where you've come from when it was 5 of you in that scenario to, I have no doubt that you will achieve your goals and achieve financial peace. What do you think he would say?
He's already expressed how proud he is, of what I've achieved, and as far as talking to him about my finances and things, I would tell him my goals, but I don't actually go into depth about my finances because I try not to get advice from friends and family as much anymore.
When you get to the destination, do you think that dialogue might change because then no one can derail you, or do you think that that's just a DNA thing for you? You're happy to keep it all in house?
Oh, no, I actually don't have an issue talking about my finances and things like that with people in general. It's just I try to be selective of where I can get my advice from. No offense to my dad or anything, he's...
No, we understand.
Yeah, well, the challenge when you've got people close to you, if they give you advice and you don't take it, it puts you in an awkward position. So you want to make sure that if you seek advice and they're suitably qualified, otherwise, that's an uncomfortable Christmas dinner conversation.
Yeah.
And so, Michael, my final question is: do you feel in control?
Yes, I feel in control,
and you should. There are a lot of people who may still not feel in control, who are in a position that's far stronger than yours or far weaker than yours. So just the mindset to feel in control is in itself half the battle won, right? Then it's just the execution, the get busy doing. So I'm glad that you answered yes to that question, because I would have said you are, and well in control to that as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, Michael, it's a joy and privilege that Ben and I get on this summer series to take some time to unpeel, look under the curtain on a lot of people's circumstances. You've been very generous, and the candor with which you've described your situation has been something that we've both appreciated. Our community of people, our Coucher community, will get enormous benefit from hearing your story. So on behalf of Ben and I, we thank you for joining us on the Property Couch.
Yeah, and congratulate you for a job so far well done.
Thank you.
There you go, Ben. How's that one?
Yeah, I mean, what's fun about these things, Bryce, is we don't get a lot of the backstory, right? So we these people have put their hands up, they're courageous, and we start asking questions. And the very first question, my mum left us.
Yes.
Wow, yeah. Okay, wasn't expecting that.
No.
And then where you go from that, and then when you learn about coping mechanisms and what you do, and car loans, credit cards, trying to fit in, trying to find your identity, and then now coming out the other side of that, and now the discipline, the focus, the delayed gratification, the sacrifice, it's all in there.
It is.
It's a very, very positive story.
Yeah, no. So I think that what I'd like to shout out to folks is, if you come from a tight money backstory, hopefully there was something in Michael's story there where you could resonate with, where you think, okay, I can actually rise above that conditioning so that I can cut my own path. So I think he had a really great story. I think it's really brave to be so transparent. One of the interesting things we can tell all our listeners, Ben, is when we push stop on the recording, he just said, look, you got a lot more out of me than I thought you would. So that was a testament to how transparent Michael was prepared to be with our line of questioning. So I think it was a really, really good chat, and I certainly appreciate him taking the time to share that with us, Ben, on his way to financial peace.
I agree, Bryce, and I think as we turn into a new year tomorrow, it really is important in terms of how our community and you individual listener that we're talking to right now, how you show up for the new year, right? So you could listen to Michael's story and say, well, that all sounds too hard, and I'm not prepared to do that to get to where he wants to get to. Look at all that sacrifice that he's made. If that's the story you want to tell yourself in terms of the bias that you want to hold, then chances are you'll be telling yourself stories around excuses and what might have been into the new year and way beyond, as opposed to taking telling yourself the story. He's been through a lot and he's come out the other side and successfully. So that should be something for you to take away, in our community, in our listening group. is to say, how are you going to determine how you treat that story? Are you going to treat that story and every other story in our summer series about, oh, that's a little bit too much, or that I relate to that, I can make that change? Because that was the takeaway for me. I just thought some people will be listening to this and saying, oh, that doesn't sound exciting, or that sounds like I'm not going to have much fun. So, that'll be my reasoning for not doing anything. But I know in our listener base, Bryce, that they're showing up because they have aspiration, they have desire to be where they want to be, they have a reason for turning the lights on. And what you're also seeing in some of these summer series, and more to come, is that these people have a bit of get up and go in them. And if you've got that get up and go, and you tell yourself the right story, that is 2021 is new, it's fresh, it's a new beginning, that's where you're going to get the best benefit out of this and start to show up and have a go and really invest in yourself, which is what all these people have done. The other common theme that they've all done is that they've invested in themselves and getting educated and taking on that knowledge. So I think there's a couple of great lessons in there.
Yeah, you're right, Ben. Well said, by the way. But the whole idea of money transformations through our summer series is just to give people inspiration. Like you said, if you are someone who can relate to what you just said around, oh, it just does feel like a mountain that I don't want to climb. Well, hopefully you can see tough backstories, money as a stressor, great backstories with the case of Brendan, who opened our summer series. Max had a missile on his leg. Like none of these stories are silver spoon stories. They're journeys of people, of human spirit overcoming the odds and achieving some financial peace. So,
and goal orientation wedged right through in the DNA of everyone there as well. So they're planning to become what they plan to. I love it. Just love it. So I'm thrilled with where we're at, and now we turn into the new year and we've got, several more to go. Bring it on, Bryce. Bring it on.
Well, Ben, in the theme of 2020, you and I are talking to each other via a computer screen. So here's a virtual handshake to you, mate. Congratulations on navigating 2020 together with me and the crew on the couch. What a pleasure it is to complete our 5th year as we roll over into our 6th calendar year of doing the Property Couch. So folks, plenty more to come. Get set. Hope you have a great night tonight if you're listening to this as it comes out. Otherwise, hopefully you don't have a sore head if you're listening to us on New Year's Day or beyond, Ben. But until next week. Actually, no. Got time out. Until next year.
Till next year, Bryce. Knowledge is empowering, but only if you act on it.
See you, folks. Happy New Year. Hey there, folks. Bryce here again, hoping that you're enjoying each and every one of these amazing transformation stories on the summer series. Now, I just want to remind you that these transformations are available for you too. All you need to do is go to thepropertycouch.com.au/summer series, and there you'll be able to download a free copy of our best-selling book, Make Money Simple Again, which is the instruction manual on how to implement Money Smarts. And you'll also have instructions on how to use our free My Wealth portal that brings it all together and shows you how to implement this money transformation in your life. So I certainly want to encourage you to do that. Now, 2021, we plan to be the best year we've ever had on the podcast. And so we want to hear from you. So if you go to thepropertycouch.com.au/summer series, there is a survey that you can fill out and let us know the guests, the topics, the ideas, anything that you want to hear talked about on the Property Couch. We certainly want to hear from you. So that's thepropertycouch.com.au/summer series. And if you complete that, you'll go into the draw to win a $500 voucher with select residential property for you to use on any research product of your choice. So I'd certainly want to encourage you to fill that out. And just a little reminder that nothing we have talked about on any of these podcasts constitutes financial advice. Of course, you should consult your suitably qualified financial advisor to help you talk about your unique circumstances. Now, folks, I want to encourage you to go to thepropertycouch.com.au/summer series.